This is Korea, divided into North and South. One, a rich, democratic, and powerful republic. The other, not so much. How did we get here? How did this happen? This is basic history on the Korean War. Korea was divided at the end of World War II, with the Soviet Union moving into the north through Manchuria, and the US landing at Incheon and claiming the south. Free elections were promised across the country to elect one government that would then rule a united Korea. This didn't happen, to say the least. The north of the country, under the auspices of the Soviet Union, elected Kim Il-sung, who brought in all the communist classics such as land reform, famine, and autocratic repression. Meanwhile, down the south, under the watchful eye of the US, Syngman Rhee was elected, and like all strongmen propped up by the West, he brought in capitalism, corruption, and autocratic repression. Both sides claimed to be the true and only government of Korea. And so just like that, we have another civil war / proxy war in the Cold War era. The war began in 1950, with the KPA, or the North Korean Army, pushed south and quickly overwhelmed the ROK, or the South Korean Army. Rapidly taking the capital of Seoul, the KPA had decisively crushed the South's defences and were rolling towards the southeast and towards what looked like a quick and easy victory. The US responded quickly, getting a UN resolution passed, only possible because the Soviet Union was boycotting it at the time. The US quickly sent troops from Japan, which it had garrisoned since the end of the war. You know the one. These troops were, for lack of a better term, soft. After 5 years of guard duty in a defeated Japan, they were under strength, under-equipped, and unprepared for frontline duty. Yet in they went, landing in the south and moving up to cover their trees with the ROK. These first US formations were mauled by the KPA. Lacking anti-tank weapons, for example, there are stories of the North Koreans just driving their tanks past US positions and attacking their supplies and artillery, leaving the infantry now stuck in their foxholes and surrounded. Despite this, they did manage to slow the advance enough that a stable front line was able to be established and held around Pusan. The North Korean forces threw everything they had at the perimeter around Pusan in an attempt to claim total victory. But the line held, and while it was being held, the UN forces had been building up for an attack of their own. Devised by the World War II legendary General MacArthur, who I will discuss fully later, the US landed Marine and Army forces at Incheon, smashed through the weak KPA positions, and retook the capital of Seoul. UN forces also broke out of the Pusan pocket, and before long, both armies had joined up and were driving north towards Pyongyang. The forces moving into North Korea were a mixed bunch. You had the ROK divisions. Now some of these were excellent fighting units, while others could not be relied upon to do much unless supported by US units. There was also a British brigade, along with a smattering of units of various sizes from other allied countries. But of course, the bulk of the UN forces came from the United States. These two had varying levels of dependability, with the Marines consistently outperforming their army counterparts, as we will soon see at the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir. By the time they crossed the border, the KPA had been effectively shattered. They couldn't offer much resistance to the UN forces as they steadily pushed north and captured the capital of Pyongyang. Mao Zedong and the CCP, just recently finishing their own bloody civil war, watched the oncoming UN forces nervously. Sharing a land border with North Korea at the Yalu River, China warned the US that it would consider UN forces moving north as a threat and urged that only South Korean forces should fight north of the border. The US ignores this, with many of them, especially General MacArthur, believing the Chinese would never get involved, and moreover were too weak after their civil war to do anything of any real note. They were wrong on both counts, with disastrous results. This is just part 1 of 2 on the Korean War. Stay tuned for part 2 next week, maybe.